As I mentioned just a few seconds ago, our next guest, who I'm super excited about, Nicolas Hulscher, an epidemiologist and administrator at the McCullough Foundation. He has been following and reporting on all of this very closely. He joins us now to share more on this. Nicolas, thank you so much for coming. We appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Do you disagree with anything that I just said?
Unfortunately, I do not. We really did hope that this wasn't the case, that birth rates and ovarian reserve of the population would have at least stayed somewhat normal, but that's not the case now. Now we do have two brand new studies that have come out in the past 2 weeks that reveal that our public health agencies, in compliance, in lockstep with the biopharmaceutical complex, has destroyed the ability for humanity to create new life across the world. And so we did see this in a rat study that just came out. They injected the rats with mRNA. It destroyed 60%, over 60% of their primordial follicles. So this is the finite egg supply of women. Does not regenerate. So those whose egg supplies have been destroyed will have a very difficult time having successful conception rates. And that is now seen in a human study with 1.3 million people analyzed. They found a 33% reduction in successful conception rates among vaccinated women. So they have destroyed they have basically have based on this evidence, conducted population control operations, and they are still doing so.
Intentionally.
It appears so. It appears so. It hasn't stopped. The data is clear, and they're not doing anything. They continue to administer these to 6-month-old children. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, to me,
talk about the credibility of these studies. Talk about the people who carried these studies out, who performed them.
Yeah, so Dr. Manichi, she's based in Denmark. She's one of the top scientists there that's been looking at the COVID-19 vaccines. And so she was the first one that found batch variability, that some vaccine batches were more dangerous than others. And now she comes out with this using population level data, very credible data, to find out who was at a lower birth rate and who had a higher birth rate. So very credible, very good study. And then we also had this rat study. This was actually researchers, I believe, in Turkey. So they probably didn't have much people to be afraid of. Like here in America, many researchers are afraid. So they just went ahead and did it, and they tested what hasn't been tested for 5 years. They should have tested this 5 years ago, but so now they finally tested it, and just found these gravely disturbing findings of ovarian destruction. Very worrisome. And even the inactivated COVID-19 vaccines did have negative effects on the ovaries.
You're an expert in the field. So from an epidemiological aspect, what does this mean for our future? I mean, am I over-exaggerating when I say 2050 population control, when I reference the Georgia Guidestones and the 500 million number? I mean, does it seem like there's a benchmark for success here for the people who are carrying out this attack on global humanity?
Well, there's a study that was funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in 2021. It was published in The Lancet. They found that by 2050, 75% of countries will not be able to sustain their population size. They won't have high enough fertility rates. And so that same study that forecasts that, and then at the same time, we have Gates Foundation funding mRNA construction factories and being instrumental in the rollout of them. So look at that contrast. They forecast population collapse, while at the same time they construct, roll out, and distribute ovarian destroying injections to the population. And so this is only going to accelerate that. And so this is very worrisome. This has to be stopped immediately. And this should have the attention of people who are claim to be worried about fertility, like Elon Musk. He claims he's worried about it, but he's nowhere to be found when
he seems to be doing plenty for fertilization on his own.
Right, exactly.
Just whoever the next thirst trap on X is, just boom, they're pregnant with some biologically enhanced being, I would imagine. Were there studies like this that have been done on fertility in the past? I mean, obviously, experts are constantly doing these studies. Is this brand new since the release of this bioweapon death clot shot known as a safe and effective vaccine to combat COVID-19, whatever the hell that is?
Well, before they were rolled out, they did test the biodistribution of these shots in rats, and they did find it went into the ovaries at very high concentrations. In fact, it went to every single organ system, but it went to the ovaries. I believe it was the third most affected, fourth most affected organ system. And so they knew it went to the ovaries, but they never bothered to publish or publicly test its toxicity in the ovaries. And so they had suspicions this happened. They probably knew this happened.
Well, we reported on that very early, actually. We had these studies. There were studies that specifically targeted fertility. So since the release of the bioweapon, yeah, I understand that. But going back, pre-COVID, before anybody ever knew anything, I mean, for decades prior to that, obviously researchers were doing fertility studies. What does the post-COVID-19 jab fertility study look like in comparison? I mean, were we always declining at this alarming rate, or is this new?
We were declining already. That began in about 2010, and that's from all sorts of chemicals and toxic things in the environment. You know, we have pesticides, we have microplastics found now in every single organ in humans when they look at autopsy. So we have all these things that are, and we have a hyper vaccination on the childhood schedule, so they're growing up, they're not going to be as fertile. So we have all these other things, but since 2021, it really did take a deep dive from these mRNA shots that literally went into their ovaries, instructed them to produce a toxic protein, and wiped out the egg supplies. And so now, not only should this be removed from the market, these mRNA shots immediately, but we have to figure out how many humans did it actually affect and start checking the ovarian reserves, because this really does have grave implications for humanity. This is not a joke. People have to take this seriously.
Real quickly, before we go, I got a couple of minutes left. What are some of the other than infertility, what are some of the most alarming things as an epidemiologist that you have seen, witnessed firsthand since the rollout of these clot shots?
We've seen damage to every body system. We've seen now brain damage. We see increase in cognitive impairment. We see increases in Alzheimer's. That was a study by Kim and colleagues. And then a recent study found that the spike protein from the vaccines is actually being produced in cerebral arteries of hemorrhagic stroke patients 17 months after injection. So we know it damages the brain. We find it in the heart. We find mRNA and spike protein directly in the heart under a microscope in patients who had myocarditis, died of a cardiac arrest. So we know it damages the heart. And then we know now that it's most definitely carcinogenic. The mRNA injections do fulfill the multi-hit hypothesis of oncogenesis. They suppress tumor suppressor genes, they impair immune surveillance, and they dysregulate the immune system through what's called IgG4 class switching. Your body becomes accustomed to these shots and starts making useless IgG4 antibodies that don't do anything, and then you're left with these cancer risks, increased infection risks, and myocarditis risks as well. And so we are seeing these rare cancers, these turbo cancers. A recent study also came out on the cancers that shows that actually in pancreatic cancer patients, those that got multiple boosters, mRNA boosters, actually lost half of their survival time and had a 300% increased risk of death.
Where's the rest of the doctors on this? You know, where are the rest of the experts in the field of epidemiology? Where are all of these pathologists? Why aren't I seeing them on the Fox News channel or CNN? I mean, this is a global crisis.
Yeah, this is a global crisis. There are a lot of good doctors, a lot of good epidemiologists that are speaking up, but a vast majority of them are not. They're scared, or they're still under mass psychosis,
But I
or
mean,
they've
they're
taken
speaking out
many.
on platforms like the Stu Peters show, which is, you know, highly censored and suppressed and only digitally available. I mean, you're not seeing this on major broadcast or cable news networks. Why?
We could probably assume that these major networks are still compromised by these big pharmaceutical companies and government interests that do not want this information reached to the population.
Well, we're going to do everything that we can to do that. Nicolas Hulscher, thank you so much. Will you come back again and talk to us some more on this? Because I mean, this is going to be something that obviously affects, you know, our children and the generations to come. So we would love to have you back to continue to cover this and possibly talk about remedy, different solutions, what people should be doing to protect themselves, et cetera. Are you down for that?
Oh, I'd love to. I'd love to come back.
All right. I got to get to break right now, but thank you so much for coming. We appreciate it, and God bless you.